The coin I want you to look at today is the 1776-1970 60 bicentennial Kennedy half-dollar, and while millions of these coins were made, certain examples can become surprisingly valuable when condition, striking quality, or a genuine mint error enters the picture. So before you spend one, toss one into a drawer, or assume that every 1776-1970 60 half-dollar is worth only 50 cents, take a closer look. The difference between an ordinary example and an exceptional one can be dramatic. The first thing that makes the 1776-1970 60 half-dollar special is that the date is not actually a normal single year. The coin carries the dual date 1776-1976, marking 200 years of American history. The United States Mint created special bicentennial versions of the quarter, half-dollar, and dollar, and these coins were authorized to carry completely different reverse designs during the celebration. The bicentennial program was one of the most ambitious changes ever made to circulating United States coinage. Instead of simply putting a normal 1976 date on familiar designs, the Mint created coins that visually connected Americans living in 1976 with the founding generation of 1776. And remember, this was not just a collector fantasy. The 1776-1970 60 half-dollar was a genuine circulating United States coin. It was made at the Denver Mint, and was intended to be seen and used by ordinary Americans. The bicentennial half-dollar actually began being released in 1975, even though the coins carried the dual date 1776-1976. That means you can encounter a 1776-1970 60 half-dollar that was physically struck during the bicentennial production period before the calendar year 1976 had even arrived. The Mint deliberately used the same dual date throughout the special program rather than creating a separate 1975 dated bicentennial half-dollar. Think about the America surrounding this coin. In 1976, the country was celebrating 2 centuries since the Declaration of Independence. Communities across the United States were holding parades, festivals, historical events, concerts, exhibitions, and patriotic celebrations. The bicentennial was everywhere. The federal government wanted the nation's coinage itself to become part of that celebration, and that is why the quarter, half-dollar, and dollar received special designs. The half-dollar became especially memorable because its reverse replaced the traditional eagle with an image of Independence Hall in Philadelphia. That reverse was designed by Seth Huntington, whose winning concept was selected through a national design competition. The building shown on the coin was not chosen randomly. Independence Hall was where the Second Continental Congress met, where George Washington was named Commander-in-Chief in 1775, and where the Declaration of Independence was adopted in 1776. So when you hold a 1776-1970 60 half-dollar, you are looking at a piece of metal that combines the image of John F. Kennedy with one of the most important buildings in American history. The obverse still carries the familiar left-facing portrait of President John F. Kennedy. Gilroy Roberts created the Kennedy portrait used on the series, and on the bicentennial issue the familiar design was modified to accommodate the special dual date. Look carefully around the portrait, and you should see Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, the designer initials, and the distinctive 1776-1976 date. Then turn the coin over and the major clue becomes Independence Hall, surrounded by the inscriptions United States of America, E Pluribus Unum, half-dollar, and 200 years of freedom. Now here is one of the most important identification tests. If you are specifically searching for a 1776-1970 60 half-dollar, you need to find the D Mint mark on the obverse. It identifies the Denver Mint as the place where the coin was struck. Do not confuse the D with damage, scratches, or random marks. It should be part of the original design and have the proper shape and position associated with the issue. The regular 1776-1970 60 half-dollar is a copper nickel-clad coin rather than a silver coin. Its outer layers are made from a copper-nickel alloy over a copper core. Standard specifications are approximately 30.6 mm in diameter and about 11.3 grams in weight, with a reeded edge. Because coins can lose small amounts of weight through circulation and normal wear, a tiny difference on a household scale does not automatically mean you have discovered an error. Weight should be used as one clue, not as the only test. This distinction becomes extremely important because the mint also produced special 40% silver bicentennial half dollars. Those silver versions were collector issues from San Francisco and are not the normal Denver circulation coin. So if someone tells you that every 1776-1976 half dollar is made of silver, that is incorrect. A normal 1776-1976 D half dollar is clad. The D mint mark is an important clue that you are dealing with the Denver circulation issue. The honest answer is probably less dramatic than some viral coin videos suggest, but that is exactly why understanding the real market matters. The Denver Mint produced about 287,565,248 of these coins. That is an enormous mintage. Because of that, the ordinary circulated 1776-1976 D half dollar is generally not a rare coin. In many circulated grades, examples trade around face value, with modest premiums possible depending on the buyer, the coin's appearance, and local demand. A typical worn example in good condition may bring roughly 50 cents to around $1. A cleaner fine example can still generally be close to face value, perhaps around 50 cents to $1 or a little more. Very fine and extremely fine examples can sometimes bring around $1 to a few dollars when attractive and problem-free. About uncirculated examples can bring somewhat more, particularly when the surfaces are bright and the coin has strong eye appeal. An ordinary mint state example without major marks may sell for only a few dollars. Certified coins around MS63 can commonly trade in the single-digit to low double-digit range, depending on the market and certification. MS64 and MS65 examples can move into the teens or several tens of dollars. MS66 examples can command higher premiums, although the exact price depends heavily on the certification service, eye appeal, population, and current collector demand. Then we reach the grades where this common coin becomes much more interesting. A truly exceptional MS67 1776 1976 D half dollar can bring hundreds of dollars. Verified auction records show that certified MS67 examples have sold for several $100s, including documented sales around the mid-200s and substantially higher results. That does not mean every MS67 coin is worth the same amount, because certification, timing, quality, and auction competition all matter. And there's an even bigger number that deserves attention. The recorded auction record for the regular 1776-1976 clad half dollar is $8,400 for an MS66 example sold by Heritage Auctions in August 2024. That result is extremely important because it shows why collectors should never confuse a normal price guide estimate with the highest price ever achieved by an exceptional coin. A record sale is not the normal value of the entire issue. It is a result associated with a particular coin, grade, pedigree, appearance, and competitive market. So if you find an ordinary circulated 1776-1976 D half dollar, do not expect thousands of dollars. But if you find an exceptionally preserved example, the situation changes. This is one of those coins where condition can matter far more than the age of the coin. Now let's talk about errors, because this is where many online claims become misleading. A genuine mint error occurs during the manufacturing process. It can involve a striking problem, an off-center strike, a doubled strike, a brockage, a wrong planchet, or another documented production mistake. These errors can be highly collectible when they are dramatic and authentic. A coin that has been scratched with a tool, squeezed in a machine, heated, drilled, filed, polished, chemically altered, or struck against another object does not automatically become a valuable mint error. In fact, many supposed error coins found online are simply damaged coins. A deep scratch across Independence Hall, for example, is not automatically an error. A strange flattened edge can be caused by a vending machine or another mechanical impact. A coin with unusual discoloration may have been exposed to chemicals or the environment. One of the most important things to examine is whether the unusual feature appears to have happened during the original striking process. Genuine errors often show evidence that the metal itself was affected while the coin was being struck. The shapes of letters, rims, devices, and metal flow can provide clues. That is why serious collectors often rely on professional examination and third-party certification when an apparent error looks valuable. There are also unusual varieties and specialized discoveries associated with the 1776-1976 issue. Collectors have identified die-related varieties and special examples connected with unusual production circumstances. But be careful with internet claims about a mysterious mark, a missing letter, a strange line, or a supposedly unique doubling. Not every unusual feature has a recognized premium. Before paying a large amount for a supposed variety, compare it with established references and, when the potential value is significant, consider professional attribution. Another fascinating point is just how different the values can be between ordinary coins and extraordinary errors. A normal MS-65 example has documented auction results in the tens of dollars, while major certified errors can sell for hundreds or even thousands. One spectacular 1776-1976 half-dollar error involved multiple striking abnormalities and sold for $2,350 in a heritage auction. That is the kind of coin that gets collectors excited, but it is important to understand that it was valuable because of its dramatic and authenticated mint error, not simply because it was a 1776-1976 half-dollar. There have also been highly unusual pieces involving other objects or metals struck over a 1776-1976 half-dollar, including an extraordinary example that sold for more than $3,000. These are not normal examples and should never be used to claim that every bicentennial half-dollar is worth thousands. Start with the date. Make sure the coin actually carries the 1776-1976 dual date. Next, check the mint mark and confirm that it is AD. Then inspect the portrait of Kennedy and the reverse image of Independence Hall. Look at the lettering carefully. Examine the rim. Study the edge. Check the weight with an accurate digital scale and compare it with the expected specifications. You are looking for original mint luster, contact marks, scratches, hairlines, stains, discoloration, evidence of cleaning, and unusual metal movement. A coin that looks shiny because somebody polished it is not the same thing as a coin that has natural mint luster. Cleaning can dramatically reduce collector appeal, even when the coin appears bright. For condition, remember that good means substantial wear and major design details remain but are heavily softened. Fine means moderate circulation wear with more detail visible. Very fine shows stronger remaining design detail. Extremely fine has light wear with much of the original detail still present. About uncirculated has only slight friction on the highest points. Mint state means the coin has not been circulated, while gem mint state generally refers to a particularly attractive high grade with strong surfaces, strike, luster, and eye appeal. This is one of the biggest mistakes new collectors make. Never use toothpaste, metal polish, vinegar, abrasive cloths, or household chemicals to make an old coin look newer. Those methods can permanently damage the surface and remove the original finish that collectors want to preserve. Hold the coin by its edges, keep it in a proper inert holder, and store it somewhere dry and stable. If your 1776-1976 half-dollar appears unusually sharp, has remarkable luster, has very few marks, or seems to contain a dramatic mint error, professional grading may be worth considering. But grading is most useful when the potential value justifies the cost. There is no reason to spend a large certification fee on an ordinary circulated half-dollar worth roughly face value. And remember one more important point. Do not confuse the Denver-clad issue with the San Francisco silver issue. The silver bicentennial half-dollars were special collector products, and their composition and mint origin are different. If you suspect your coin is silver, verify it properly rather than relying on color alone. The 1776-1976 half-dollar is fascinating because it sits at the intersection of history, everyday American life, and modern collecting. More than 287 million were struck at Denver, so rarity by date alone is not the reason collectors care about it. The real excitement comes from finding an unusually preserved example, a recognized variety, or an authenticated mint error. And that is the lesson I want you to remember. A coin does not have to be extremely old to be worth examining. Sometimes the most interesting pieces are hiding in plain sight because millions of people once handled them without realizing that decades later collectors would study their condition, varieties, and errors. So before you spend that old 1776-1970 $60 half-dollar, take a second look. Check the dual date. Check the D mint mark. Inspect Kennedy's portrait. Turn it over and study Independence Hall. Look carefully at the rim, lettering, edge, surfaces, and overall condition. If you see something genuinely unusual, do not clean it, and do not rush to sell it to the first person who makes an offer. Photograph it, compare it with trusted references, and consider getting a professional opinion. That old half-dollar in your drawer may be completely ordinary, and that is perfectly fine. It still carries the story of America's bicentennial. But if it happens to be an exceptionally preserved specimen, or a genuine mint error, you may have found something much more interesting than 50 cents. But that missing letter is actually exactly what you should expect on a 1977 no-mint mark Kennedy half-dollar. And while this is not normally a rare $1 million coin, there are genuine errors, exceptional high-grade examples, and unusual pieces that can make a common-looking 1977 half-dollar much more interesting than its face value suggests. So before you spend one, clean one, or toss one back into a jar, take a closer look, because the story behind the 1977 no-mint mark Kennedy half-dollar is far more fascinating than most people realize. The 1977 no-mint mark Kennedy half-dollar was produced at the Philadelphia Mint, and one of the most important things to understand is that Philadelphia did not place a mint mark on its circulating coins during this period. That means the absence of a mint mark is not an error on a normal 1977 Philadelphia half-dollar. It is an identifying feature. The coin is part of the Kennedy half-dollar series that began in 1964, created in honor of President John F. Kennedy following his assassination in 1963. By 1977, the Kennedy half-dollar had already undergone several important changes. The original 1964 Kennedy half-dollar was made from 90% silver, but rising silver prices led the United States Mint to change the composition. By 1971, regular Kennedy half-dollars were being struck in copper nickel-clad composition, and that is the composition you should expect to find on a normal 1977 no-mint mark example. The United States was also going through a fascinating period when the 1977 no-mint mark Kennedy half-dollar was made. Jimmy Carter had just become president, the country was dealing with inflation and energy concerns, and Americans were adjusting to a changing economy and a rapidly changing culture. The nation was still recovering from the economic pressures of the 1970s, while new technology, entertainment, and political developments were shaping everyday life. Against that backdrop, the United States Mint continued producing familiar denominations for commerce, including the Kennedy half-dollar. But there was an interesting problem with the half-dollar itself. Although it remained an official denomination, Americans were using half-dollars less frequently in everyday transactions than they once had. That is one reason many 1977 Kennedy half-dollars survived in surprisingly good condition. Some were placed into bank rolls, saved by collectors, or simply left untouched because people did not encounter them very often. Now let us identify the exact coin you have. The 1977 no-mint mark Kennedy half-dollar should carry the date 1977 on the obverse, beneath the portrait of Kennedy. The obverse was designed by Gilroy Roberts, while the reverse was designed by Frank Gasparo. Kennedy faces left on the obverse, with the inscriptions Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and the date 1977. Turn the coin over and you will see the presidential seal-style reverse with a heraldic eagle, shield, arrows, olive branches, stars, and the inscriptions United States of America and half-dollar. On a normal 1977 Philadelphia issue, you will not see a D or S mint mark. That blank space is normal. The technical specifications give you another way to confirm what you are holding. A normal 1977 no-mint Mark Kennedy half-dollar weighs approximately 11.34 grams, measures approximately 30.6 millimeters across, and has a reeded edge. It is a copper-nickel-clad coin with a copper core rather than a solid silver planchet. If you have a precise digital scale, weighing the coin can be useful when investigating an unusual piece. But remember that ordinary circulation, dirt, small amounts of wear, or scale tolerances can produce slight differences. A small weight difference by itself does not prove an error. The mintage is another important clue. Approximately 43,598,000 examples of the 1977 no-mint Mark Kennedy half-dollar were produced at Philadelphia. That is a substantial production figure, so the ordinary coin is not considered scarce simply because it lacks a mint mark. This is where many online coin stories go wrong. You may see dramatic claims suggesting that every 1977 no-mint Mark half-dollar is extremely rare or automatically worth thousands or millions of dollars. That is not supported by established market evidence. The normal 1977 no-mint Mark Kennedy half-dollar is generally a common coin. Its value comes primarily from condition, exceptional quality, recognized errors, and collector demand rather than from the date alone. So what should your coin actually be worth? In circulated condition, a normal 1977 no-mint Mark Kennedy half-dollar is generally worth around face value to perhaps modestly above face value depending on the buyer and condition. Current NGC information places circulated examples around 60 to 75 cents in its guide, while other market data can vary. In good condition, where the coin shows substantial wear but the major design remains clear, you are generally looking at roughly face value to around $1. In fine condition, the coin has more detail remaining and might bring around $1 or slightly more. In very fine condition, perhaps around $1 or $2 is reasonable for an ordinary example. Extremely fine and about uncirculated pieces can move higher, particularly when they have attractive surfaces and strong original appearance. But the real collecting game begins when you reach mint state. A mint state 1977 no-mint Mark Kennedy half-dollar has never been circulated, although it can still have marks from production and handling. An MS-60 coin can be worth only a few dollars, while MS-63 and MS-64 examples can bring several dollars depending on the market. At MS-65, values can move into the several dollar to low double-digit range. At MS-66, the coin becomes considerably more interesting to collectors, with documented market examples around the tens of dollars. The very highest grades are where the numbers can rise dramatically. Current market guides show substantially higher values for top-grade examples, and auction records demonstrate that superb 1977 Kennedy half-dollars can attract strong collector attention. One particularly important verified sale involved the 1977 no-mint Mark Kennedy half-dollar graded MS-66 by PCGS. It sold for $38 at Great Collections in September 2013. That does not mean every MS-66 example is worth $38 today, because coin markets change and individual surfaces, eye appeal, certification populations, and buyer demand all matter. More recently, public auction data has recorded a 1977 no-mint Mark Kennedy half-dollar graded MS-67 Plus by NGC selling for $630 in April 2024. That is the kind of sale that shows why condition matters so much. The difference between an ordinary circulated coin and an exceptionally preserved, professionally graded coin can be enormous. And there is another lesson here. A coin does not have to be old to become collectible. The 1977 no-mint Mark Kennedy half-dollar is now nearly half a century old, but age alone does not make it rare. Collectors care about the combination of age, scarcity, condition, varieties, errors, historical importance, and demand. A common coin with an extraordinary error can be much more valuable than a much older coin with nothing unusual about it. This brings us to the part that could make your 1977 no-mint Mark half-dollar genuinely exciting: mint errors. Genuine mint errors happen during the manufacturing process at the United States Mint. They are not simply scratches, stains, dents, or damage that happened after the coin entered circulation. For example, a dramatic off-center strike, a genuine clipped planchet, a double strike, a wrong planchet error, or another documented minting mistake can be highly collectible. A normal coin that has been hit by a machine, scratched on concrete, chemically altered, or damaged with tools is not automatically a mint error. There are documented 1977 Kennedy half-dollar errors that demonstrate how valuable these mistakes can become. Public auction records include a 1977 no-mint mark half-dollar struck 5% off-center in MS-65 that sold for $134 in June 2026. Another documented 1977 example, graded MS-64, had a 20% curved clip and sold for $104 in June 2023. There is also a dramatic 1977 double-struck example with the second strike approximately 90% off-center and a uniface reverse that sold for $425 in September 2020. These are real documented transactions, but they are exceptional error coins, not normal 1977 no-mint mark half-dollars. That distinction is incredibly important. If your coin has a dark spot, green discoloration, scratches, a flattened edge, or a strange shape caused by someone bending it, you should not immediately assume you have discovered a mint error. Post-mint damage is extremely common. A genuine error should show evidence consistent with something that happened while the coin was being manufactured. That is why serious collectors often rely on professional attribution and grading services when an unusual piece appears. You should also pay close attention to the edge. The normal 1977 no-mint mark Kennedy half-dollar has a reeded edge and should not be made of silver. Some collectors become suspicious when a coin weighs differently or looks unusually bright. But appearance alone is not enough. If you suspect a wrong planchet error or an unusual metal composition, do not clean the coin or attempt destructive tests. A professional examination can determine whether the weight, dimensions, metal composition, and strike characteristics are consistent with a genuine mint error. Condition is equally important. A good example will have extensive wear, especially on Kennedy's hair and the eagle on the reverse. Fine condition retains more detail, while very fine examples show moderate wear but still preserve much of the design. Extremely fine examples have only light wear on the highest points. About uncirculated examples may show just slight friction, often on Kennedy's cheek, hair, or other raised areas. Once you reach mint state, there should be no evidence of actual circulation wear. Gem mint state generally means a very high-quality coin with excellent preservation, strong luster, attractive surfaces, and minimal distracting marks. If you find a 1977 no-mint mark half-dollar that looks unusually clean and bright, resist the temptation to polish it. Cleaning is one of the fastest ways to reduce collector appeal. Never scrub it with a cloth, use metal polish, dip it in household chemicals, or try to make it shine. Original surfaces are valuable to collectors. If the coin is especially rare because of an error or because of its exceptional condition, professional grading can provide authentication, a standardized grade, and a protective holder. Before you sell, there are several things you should check. First, confirm the date is actually 1977. Second, make sure there is no mint mark beneath the portrait, because that identifies the Philadelphia issue. Third, inspect both sides under good lighting. Look at the lettering, the date, Kennedy's portrait, the eagle, the rim, and the edge. Look for signs of doubling, unusual striking, missing design elements, clips, off-center placement, multiple strikes, or anything that appears physically impossible for normal wear. Fourth, weigh the coin carefully if you have a reliable scale. Fifth, compare the coin with authenticated examples rather than random internet photographs. And finally, if you believe you have a major error, consider professional authentication before accepting an offer from a dealer. There is also an important collector fact that many beginners overlook. Some of the most valuable coins are not necessarily the coins with the highest mintage or lowest mintage. They are sometimes coins that survived in extraordinary condition. A coin like the 1977 no-mint mark Kennedy half-dollar could have been produced by the millions, yet very few may survive at the highest certified grades with exceptional surfaces. That is why population reports, auction history, and actual realized prices matter more than sensational claims. So if you have a 1977 no-mint mark Kennedy half-dollar in your collection, what should you do? Do not assume it is rare simply because there is no mint mark. That absence is normal for Philadelphia coins from this period. But do not dismiss it either. Examine its condition. Look for genuine mint errors. Check the weight and dimensions if something seems unusual. Preserve the original surfaces. And if you have an exceptionally sharp example, especially one that appears virtually untouched, professional grading may be worth considering. The most exciting part of coin collecting is that you never completely know what you are going to find until you look closely. A coin that appears ordinary at first can reveal a fascinating history, an unusual production mistake, or an extraordinary level of preservation. The 1977 no-mint mark Kennedy half-dollar is a perfect example. Most are worth modest amounts, but exceptional condition and genuine errors can completely change the story. Verified sales have already shown that unusual 1977 examples can bring hundreds of dollars, while top-grade regular examples can command substantially more than their face value. We are taking a close look at the 1978 Kennedy half-dollar, a coin that many people overlook because it is a modern clad coin, yet one that can become surprisingly interesting when you find an unusually sharp example. And there is one important fact you should know right away. The Denver Mint produced 13,765,799 examples of the 1978 Kennedy half-dollar. That is not a tiny mintage, so the date itself does not make the coin rare. But when you start searching the highest grades, the story changes dramatically. One exceptionally graded 1978 Kennedy half-dollar reached an auction record of $3,760 in a certified MS-67 Plus grade in December 2022. That is the kind of result that makes serious collectors stop and look twice. So before you spend one, throw one into a jar, or assume it is just another 50-cent piece, take a closer look, because the real treasure may be hiding in the condition. To understand why the 1978 Kennedy half-dollar attracts collectors, we need to step back into the United States of 1978. The country was moving through a period of major economic and political change. Jimmy Carter was president, inflation was a major concern, energy problems were affecting American life, and the United States was approaching the end of the decade with a mixture of economic uncertainty and technological optimism. In the background, American families were dealing with rising prices while personal computers and new technologies were beginning to reshape everyday life. The Kennedy half-dollar itself had already become an important piece of American history. It was introduced in 1964, shortly after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, and the design quickly became one of the most recognizable modern American coin designs. By 1978, however, the half-dollar had changed significantly from its original silver composition. The United States Mint was producing regular circulating Kennedy half-dollars using a copper-nickel-clad composition, making the 1978 a very different coin from the famous silver 1964 Kennedy half-dollar. The 1978 Kennedy half-dollar was struck at the Denver Mint, and that mint mark is one of the first things you should look for. Turn the coin to the obverse side, the side showing President Kennedy, and look underneath the neck of Kennedy. The small D tells you that this particular coin was produced at Denver. The date 1978 appears at the bottom of the obverse. Around the portrait you will see the word Liberty, along with In God We Trust positioned on both sides of Kennedy. The design was created by Gilroy Roberts on the obverse and Frank Gasparo on the reverse. When you turn the coin over, you will see the powerful American eagle holding arrows and an olive branch, surrounded by a circle of stars. The words United States of America and half-dollar complete the reverse design. Now here is where your examination should become much more serious. The 1978 Kennedy half-dollar has a diameter of about 30.6 millimeters and a standard weight of about 11.34 grams. Its regular composition is copper nickel clad over a pure copper center. That means this is not a silver half-dollar, and you should not assume that its value comes from precious metal content. In fact, if you look carefully at the edge, you can often see the copper-colored center line between the outer clad layers. The edge is reeded, with many small ridges running around the circumference. These physical characteristics give you several ways to confirm that you are actually looking at a normal 1978 Kennedy half-dollar rather than a different coin or an unusual composition. The mintage is another important piece of the puzzle. Denver produced 13,765,799 examples in 1978. That sounds like a large number, and it is large enough that the ordinary circulated 1978 Kennedy half-dollar is generally not considered a rare coin. This is an important distinction because online videos and advertisements sometimes make ordinary coins sound extremely valuable. The 1978 is not automatically worth thousands of dollars simply because it is old. Most circulated examples trade close to face value or for a modest premium depending on demand and the seller. But collectors are not always searching for rarity in the traditional sense. Sometimes they are searching for condition rarity, and that is where the 1978 becomes much more interesting. Imagine finding one that has spent decades protected inside an old collection or forgotten mint set. Instead of scratches, contact marks, dull surfaces, and worn details, the coin may still have brilliant original luster. Kennedy's hair may show strong detail. The lettering may be crisp. The eagle and feathers on the reverse may remain sharply defined. The fields may be remarkably clean. And most importantly, there may be very few distracting marks. That is when grading becomes extremely important. A circulated 1978 Kennedy half-dollar in good condition will show substantial wear across the high points of the design. In fine condition, more detail remains visible, but the coin clearly shows circulation. Very fine examples have stronger definition in Kennedy's hair and the reverse design, while extremely fine examples retain even more detail with relatively moderate wear. About uncirculated examples show only slight friction on the highest points, and can still have much of their original appearance. Once you enter mint state, however, the coin has never experienced ordinary circulation wear. At this point, tiny marks from contact with other coins become extremely important. An MS-60 coin can be uncirculated but still show noticeable marks, dullness, or other distractions. At MS-63, the overall appearance is usually stronger, but contact marks can still be obvious. At MS-65, collectors begin expecting a much cleaner and more attractive coin. MS-66 examples are considerably more desirable, and MS-67 or higher can become condition rarities. The 1978 demonstrates this perfectly. The coin itself is common compared with genuinely scarce dates, but finding one in an exceptionally high grade with exceptional surfaces and strike quality is much more difficult. The auction record gives us a powerful real-world example. PCGS records an auction result of $3,760 for a 1978 Kennedy half-dollar graded MS-67 Plus, sold by Legend Rare Coin Auctions on December 8, 2022. That result should not be interpreted as the normal value of every 1978 half-dollar. It represents an extraordinary certified example at the very top of the condition scale. It is precisely why collectors should understand the difference between a normal coin and a condition rarity. For realistic values, circulated 1978 Kennedy half-dollars generally do not command dramatic premiums. A worn example may be worth around 50 cents to perhaps $1, or a little more depending on the market, and whether someone specifically needs the coin for a collection. Better circulated examples can bring modest premiums. Uncirculated examples are more interesting. Certified pieces in lower mint state grades may trade for only a few dollars, while attractive MS-63 and MS-64 examples can bring several dollars to perhaps the low tens of dollars depending on the exact market and certification. At MS-65, prices can rise significantly, and at MS-66 and especially MS-67, the population of truly exceptional pieces becomes much smaller. The strongest certified examples can command hundreds or even thousands of dollars. The documented $3,760 MS-67 Plus auction result demonstrates just how dramatic the difference can become at the very top. But there is another question every collector should ask. What about errors? This is where caution is essential. A genuine mint error can make a normal coin dramatically more desirable, but damage that happened after the coin left the mint does not automatically create a valuable error. If someone bends the coin, scratches it, punches it, drills it, squeezes it, chemically changes it, or damages the edge, that is post-mint damage. It may look unusual, but unusual does not mean valuable. A genuine mint error occurs because something went wrong during the manufacturing process. Examples in the broader Kennedy half-dollar series can include wrong planchets, major off-center strikes, clips, broad strikes, dramatic die-related problems, and other documented minting mistakes. But you should never assume that every strange-looking 1978D is a rare error. A weak area might simply be caused by strike quality. A raised line might be a die crack, but it could also be a scratch. A strange color could come from environmental exposure. A missing detail could be the result of wear. Authentication is extremely important before assigning a major value. One of the best tests is to examine the coin under magnification without touching the surface unnecessarily. Look at the date, the D mint mark, Kennedy's portrait, the lettering, the stars, the eagle, and the edge. Compare the unusual feature with known minting characteristics. If the coin appears to have a major error, do not clean it, and do not attempt to repair it. A reputable professional grading service or an experienced error coin specialist can determine whether the feature is actually mint-made. And please remember something extremely important about cleaning. Do not polish your 1978D Kennedy half-dollar because you think a shiny surface will make it more valuable. Collectors generally prefer original surfaces. Cleaning can leave hairlines and unnatural surfaces that permanently reduce desirability. Even if your coin looks dirty, leave it alone unless you have professional guidance. Hold the coin by its edges, avoid touching the fields with your fingers, and store it in a proper inert holder rather than loose in an environment where it can be scratched. There is also an interesting collector fact hiding in the production numbers. The late 1970s were a period when Kennedy half-dollar mintages had dropped sharply compared with some earlier years. The mint had produced enormous numbers of Kennedy halves during previous decades, especially during the silver era and the early clad period, but demand for the denomination had weakened. The 1978D mintage of 13,765,799 was therefore much lower than some earlier Kennedy half-dollar issues. That does not make the 1978D rare by itself, but it helps explain why collectors pay attention to the date when assembling complete sets. Another reason collectors search for the 1978D is simple nostalgia. For many Americans, this is a coin from childhood, from a period when Kennedy half-dollars could still occasionally appear in banks, cash drawers, family collections, and old coin jars. The coin connects a recognizable American president with a specific moment in the country's history. Even when the financial value is modest, the historical value and collecting appeal can be surprisingly strong. Before selling your 1978D Kennedy half-dollar, take one final careful look. Confirm the date. Confirm the D mint mark beneath Kennedy's neck. Check the weight with an accurate digital scale. Check the diameter if you have suitable measuring equipment. Inspect the edge for the expected clad construction and reading. Look for original luster. Search for scratches, dents, discoloration, cleaning, and heavy contact marks. Then examine the coin for anything that appears genuinely mint-made. If you believe you have an exceptional high-grade example, professional certification may be worthwhile because a tiny difference in grade can mean a very large difference in market value at the upper end. And this is the most important lesson of the 1978D Kennedy half-dollar. The coin is not valuable simply because it says 1978 and carries AD. Millions were made, and ordinary circulated examples are generally common. The opportunity comes from finding something exceptional. It could be an unusually preserved mint state coin. It could be a legitimate major mint error. It could be an outstanding example with the quality needed to compete at the highest certification levels. The documented MS-67 Plus auction result proves that a common modern clad half-dollar can become a serious collectible when condition rarity enters the picture. So the next time you open an old coin jar, sort through a family collection, search a box of inherited coins, or receive a Kennedy half-dollar in a bank transaction, do not automatically push the 1978 D aside. Pick it up. Look at Kennedy's portrait. Find that tiny D, study the surfaces. Check the weight. Examine the edge. Look for genuine abnormalities, and most importantly, learn to separate real mint errors from ordinary damage. Imagine finding a 1979 Kennedy half-dollar sitting unnoticed in an old coin jar, a dresser drawer, or a forgotten collection. At first glance, it may look like nothing more than an ordinary 50-cent piece. But before you spend one, there are a few things you should know, because the 1979 no-mint mark Kennedy half-dollar has some fascinating history, important varieties to investigate, and a handful of unusual errors that can make an otherwise common coin much more interesting to collectors. The biggest surprise is that the absence of a mint mark on this coin is not automatically an error. In fact, for 1979 Kennedy half-dollars made at the Philadelphia Mint, no mint mark is exactly what you should expect. So if you have one in your hands right now, do not assume it is rare simply because there is no letter under Kennedy's portrait. The real question is what else is going on with the coin. To understand why the 1979 no mint mark Kennedy half-dollar matters, we need to go back to 1979. The United States was entering the final years of a turbulent decade. Inflation was a major concern, gasoline prices were climbing, interest rates were rising, and Americans were adjusting to major economic and political changes. Jimmy Carter was president, the country was approaching the 1980 presidential election, and the space program, technology, automobiles, and popular culture were all changing rapidly. Meanwhile, the United States Mint continued producing enormous quantities of circulating coins, including the Kennedy half-dollar. The Kennedy half-dollar had been introduced in 1964, just months after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. The coin became one of the most recognizable modern American denominations, and by 1979 it had already undergone several major composition changes. The 1979 no-mint mark Kennedy half-dollar is a 50-cent coin struck at the Philadelphia Mint. Unlike coins from Denver or San Francisco, Philadelphia coins traditionally carried no mint mark during this period. That means the missing letter beneath the portrait is normal for a Philadelphia issue. This is one of the first things every collector should understand. If you find a 1979 Kennedy half-dollar without a D or S mint mark, that does not automatically mean the mint forgot to stamp it. The coin can be a completely legitimate Philadelphia issue. The important identification details are the date 1979 on the obverse, the absence of a mint mark below Kennedy's neck, and the standard Kennedy half-dollar design. The coin itself is substantial compared with a modern penny. The 1979 Kennedy half-dollar measures approximately 30 millimeters across and weighs approximately 11.34 grams. It is composed of a copper and nickel outer layer bonded to a copper core. This clad composition had been used for circulating Kennedy half-dollars since the mid-1960s, replacing the original 90% silver composition used in 1964. That distinction is extremely important for collectors because someone unfamiliar with Kennedy half-dollars may see the large size and assume the coin contains silver. A regular 1979 no-mint mark Kennedy half-dollar is not a 90% silver coin. Its metallic composition is copper and nickel clad over a copper core. Now take a close look at the obverse. John F. Kennedy faces left, with the inscription Liberty surrounding the portrait, and the date 1979 appearing near the lower portion of the design. The familiar motto "In God We Trust" appears across the lower central area. Flip the coin over and you will see the presidential seal, with an eagle holding a bundle of arrows and an olive branch, surrounded by stars. The inscriptions United States of America and $50 complete the reverse design. These details are useful because counterfeiters and altered coins sometimes reveal themselves through incorrect lettering, weak details, unusual surfaces, or dimensions that do not match a genuine example. There is another important point that separates an ordinary 1979 no-mint Mark Kennedy $50 from a potentially valuable discovery. You need to understand the difference between a variety, a mint error, and damage that happened after the coin left the mint. A variety is a recognizable difference created during the die production or striking process, often involving a specific die pairing or design feature. A mint error is a mistake that occurs during manufacturing. Post-mint damage happens after the coin enters circulation. Scratches, gouges, drilled holes, flattened edges, discoloration from chemicals, harsh polishing, grinding, and dents are usually damage rather than valuable errors. For example, suppose you find a 1979 no-mint Mark Kennedy $50 with a strange-looking rim. That alone does not prove it is a valuable error. The coin could have been hit by another object after leaving the mint. But if the abnormal feature shows characteristics consistent with a known striking error, especially if the metal flow and surfaces indicate that the problem occurred during production, then the coin deserves much closer examination. Genuine errors can include off-center strikes, broad strikes, clipped planchets, double strikes, struck-through errors, and other unusual manufacturing mistakes. The key is evidence. A dramatic-looking coin is not automatically a rare coin. This is also where collectors can make a costly mistake. Online photographs often make damaged coins look spectacular. A coin with a large gouge across Kennedy's face may look unusual, but unusual is not the same thing as valuable. A genuine mint error should have physical characteristics that make sense within the minting process. If the coin appears to have been scratched, squeezed, drilled, melted, chemically altered, or deliberately modified, its value can actually be lower than that of a normal example. When something looks extraordinary, authentication becomes more important, not less. So what is a normal 1979 no-mint Mark Kennedy $50 worth today? For most circulated examples, the answer is much more modest than sensational internet claims suggest. These coins were produced in large quantities, and ordinary circulated examples generally trade close to their face value or for a modest premium depending on condition, demand, and the buyer. A heavily circulated example may be worth roughly 50 cents to a small premium. Cleaner examples can bring more, particularly when they have attractive surfaces and strong detail. The important lesson is that the date alone does not turn a 1979 no-mint Mark Kennedy $50 into a rare fortune. Condition, however, can change the conversation. A coin in good condition will show substantial circulation, with noticeable wear across Kennedy's hair and facial features and wear on the reverse design. In fine condition, the major details remain clearer, although obvious wear is still present. Very fine examples retain considerably more detail, while extremely fine coins show only light wear on the highest points. About uncirculated examples have very limited circulation wear and may still show much of their original mint appearance. Once you reach mint state, the coin has no evidence of circulation, although it can still have contact marks from being handled or stored with other coins. At the top end, gem mint state examples become much more interesting because collectors pay close attention to luster, strike quality, surface preservation, and eye appeal. A common coin in average condition may be easy to find, but a beautifully preserved example with excellent surfaces can be much harder to locate. That does not mean every high-grade example is worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. Professional grading is based on strict standards, and even small marks can prevent a coin from reaching the highest grades. This is why you should never judge a coin's value simply by looking at a price someone posted online. A coin described as a 1979 Kennedy $50 could represent several different issues, conditions, varieties, or errors. A spectacular auction result for an exceptional certified specimen should not be treated as the normal value of every 1979 no-mint Mark Kennedy $50. When researching a potentially valuable coin, compare the exact date, mint status, grade, variety, error type, certification, and actual completed sales rather than asking prices. One of the most interesting things about the 1979 no mint mark issue is precisely that the missing mint mark is normal. This makes it a perfect example of why knowledge is more valuable than hype. New collectors sometimes hear that a missing mint mark automatically means a coin is rare. That is not true. Philadelphia coins from this era can legitimately have no mint mark. If your 1979 Kennedy half-dollar has no letter beneath Kennedy's neck, you have identified an important characteristic, but you have not yet discovered a rarity. Still, there are reasons to inspect the coin carefully. Look first at the date. Make sure the digits clearly read 1979 and have not been altered. Examine the area beneath Kennedy's neck and confirm that there is genuinely no mint mark rather than a faint or damaged mark. Next, inspect the rim. A normal coin should have a consistent edge and proper thickness. Look for unusual spreading of the metal, missing portions, or evidence of an abnormal strike. Then inspect both sides under good lighting. Search for doubling that appears integrated into the design rather than simple scratches or reflections. Check the lettering, date, stars, eagle, and major design elements. Weight is another useful test. A genuine 1979 clad Kennedy half-dollar should be around 11.34 grams when measured on an accurate digital scale. A small difference can occur because of wear and manufacturing tolerances, so one unusual measurement does not prove anything by itself. But a substantial discrepancy should make you investigate further. Diameter should also be approximately 30 millimeters. If the weight, diameter, thickness, or overall appearance is significantly wrong, do not immediately clean the coin or try to repair it. Preserve it exactly as you found it, and have it examined. Cleaning is one of the biggest mistakes a new collector can make. If you believe your 1979 no mint mark Kennedy half-dollar might be valuable, do not polish it with a cloth, abrasive, household cleaner, metal polish, or chemical solution. Cleaning can leave permanent hairline scratches and unnatural surfaces, and a professional grader may classify the coin as clean rather than assigning it a normal numeric grade. Even if the coin is not rare, preserving its original surfaces is always better than trying to make it look shiny. Authentication is especially important if you believe you have a major mint error. Start with basic measurements and clear photographs. Compare the coin with reliable references and, if the characteristics still look unusual, consider having the coin examined by a reputable professional or established grading service. For an ordinary circulated 1979 no mint mark Kennedy half-dollar, professional grading may cost more than the coin itself. But for a genuinely unusual error or an exceptionally high-grade specimen, professional authentication can make a major difference because it gives buyers confidence that the coin is genuine. There is also a collector psychology behind these coins. Kennedy half-dollars occupy a special place in American collecting because the design connects directly to one of the most important figures in modern American history. Many Americans remember seeing Kennedy half-dollars in family collections, bank rolls, coin jars, or inherited albums. The denomination itself is also unusual today because half-dollars are not commonly encountered in everyday change. That scarcity in daily life can make an ordinary coin feel much rarer than it actually is. And that is exactly why the 1979 no mint mark Kennedy half-dollar deserves a second look. Not because every example is secretly worth a fortune, but because it teaches you how serious coin collecting really works. The date matters. The mint matters. The composition matters. The condition matters. The variety matters. The error must be genuine. And the final value must be supported by real market evidence rather than an exaggerated headline. If you have one of these coins, check it before spending it. Confirm the 1979 date. Confirm that there is no mint mark beneath Kennedy's neck. Examine the surfaces for genuine striking abnormalities. Weigh it carefully. Look at the rim and edge. Compare the design details. Then assess the condition honestly. If it is heavily circulated and shows ordinary wear, it is probably a modest value coin. If it is exceptionally preserved, displays a recognized variety, or appears to have a genuine mint error, then it deserves more research. A 1979 no-mint mark Kennedy half-dollar may be an ordinary Philadelphia issue, but the process of examining it can reveal a world of history, manufacturing technology, grading, varieties, and collecting knowledge. And every once in a while, careful inspection can separate an ordinary coin from something genuinely unusual. So before you empty that old coin jar, before you spend the half-dollar sitting in a drawer, and before you dismiss an old Kennedy half-dollar as nothing more than 50 cents, take another look. Check the date. Check the mint mark area. Check the weight. Check the edge. Check the condition. Most importantly, learn to recognize the difference between a real mint-made feature and damage that happened later. That is exactly why the 1980 Kennedy half-dollar deserves a much closer look. Most people would see a 50-cent piece from 1980 and assume it is simply worth 50 cents. But collectors know that ordinary-looking coins can become surprisingly valuable when they have exceptional preservation, unusual mint characteristics, or a genuine mint error. And the 1980 Kennedy half-dollar has one especially interesting distinction. It was the first regular-issue Kennedy half-dollar struck at Philadelphia to carry the P mint mark. That small letter changed the way collectors identify Philadelphia Kennedy half-dollars and gave the 1980 issue an important place in the history of the series. So before you spend one, toss one into a jar, or assume it is just another old half-dollar, take a closer look, because the details could make all the difference. The story of the 1980 Kennedy half-dollar begins during an interesting period in American history. The United States was entering a new decade filled with economic uncertainty, changing technology, political tension, and major cultural shifts. Inflation was a serious concern, interest rates were rising, and Americans were experiencing a very different economy from the one that had existed when the Kennedy half-dollar was first introduced in 1964. The Kennedy half-dollar itself had also undergone major changes. When the denomination was introduced after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, it was originally struck in 90% silver. Rising silver prices eventually forced the United States Mint to reduce the amount of silver in the denomination, and by 1971 the Kennedy half-dollar had become a copper nickel-clad coin with no silver content. By 1980, that copper nickel-clad format was firmly established. The 1980 Kennedy half-dollar therefore belongs to the modern clad era rather than the valuable silver era of the Kennedy half-dollar series. The 1980 Kennedy half-dollar was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, and its reported mintage was 44,134,000 pieces. That number may sound enormous, and in terms of production it certainly is. This is not a rare coin simply because of its date or mint mark. In fact, ordinary examples are generally considered common. But there is an important difference between a coin being common overall and a coin being difficult to find in exceptional condition. That distinction is where the real collecting story begins. The 1980 Kennedy half-dollar is common through many circulated grades and lower mint state grades, but coins with exceptionally clean surfaces, strong strikes, attractive luster, and virtually no distracting marks become much more interesting to advanced collectors. To identify the coin, start with the date. You are looking for 1980 on the obverse, directly beneath the portrait of President John F. Kennedy. Then look just above the date, near the lower portion of Kennedy's portrait. You should find a small P mint mark. That P identifies Philadelphia as the mint where the coin was produced. This detail is historically important because the Philadelphia Mint did not place a mint mark on regular Kennedy half-dollars during the earlier years of the series. The 1980 Kennedy half-dollar is the first regular issue in the series to carry the P mint mark. That makes the tiny letter one of the most interesting things to inspect on this coin. The obverse design features Kennedy facing left, with the inscriptions Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and the dates surrounding the portrait. The reverse shows the presidential seal, including the eagle, shield, arrows, olive branch, stars, and the inscriptions United States of America, half-dollar, and E pluribus unum. The coin has a reeded edge with approximately 150 reeds. Its diameter is about 30.61 millimeters, and its standard weight is about 11.30 grams. The composition is 75% copper and 25% nickel over a pure copper center. That layered construction explains something you may notice when examining the edge. A normal 1980p Kennedy half-dollar should show the copper core between the outer copper-nickel layers. It should not look like a solid silver coin. And that brings us to one of the biggest mistakes people make when searching old Kennedy half-dollars. They see a bright, shiny 1980 coin and assume it contains silver because it looks silver. It does not. The 1980p Kennedy half-dollar is a copper-nickel-clad coin. Its precious metal content is not what makes a high-grade example interesting. Instead, collectors focus on condition, strike quality, surface preservation, and unusual mint-made characteristics. Now take out a digital scale if you have one. A normal example should be close to 11.30 grams. A small difference can occur because of normal production tolerances, circulation wear, dirt, or environmental effects, so one measurement should never be treated as proof of an error. But if your coin is dramatically different from the expected weight, that is when you should become more cautious. The edge should also be inspected carefully. Look for the copper-colored core and the normal reeded edge. If you see something unusual, photograph it before cleaning or altering the coin. That last warning is extremely important because cleaning can destroy collector value. A coin that has been sitting in a drawer for decades may look dull, dirty, or unattractive, but that does not mean you should polish it. Scrubbing, rubbing, dipping, sanding, or using household chemicals can leave permanent hairlines and unnatural surfaces. Collectors generally prefer original surfaces. A naturally aged coin can be worth more than a shiny coin that has been aggressively cleaned. So what about condition? This is where the value of the 1980p Kennedy half-dollar can change dramatically. A heavily circulated example with obvious wear may be worth little more than its face value, perhaps around 50 cents to a small premium depending on the buyer and the coin's appearance. In good condition, the major design details remain identifiable but considerable wear is present. In fine condition, more detail remains in Kennedy's hair and facial features, while the reverse retains more of its original design. Very fine examples show stronger detail with moderate wear, and extremely fine pieces can display substantial remaining detail with only light wear on the highest points. About uncirculated examples are much more attractive because they show only slight evidence of circulation. But once you reach mint state, the game changes. A mint state coin has no actual circulation wear, although it can still have contact marks from being transported, stored, or handled at the mint. An MS-63 coin can be attractive but may show noticeable marks. An MS-64 can be cleaner. MS-65 examples can look impressively bright and sharp. At MS-66, collectors begin paying much closer attention to surface quality and eye appeal. At MS-67, the population becomes much smaller and competition among serious collectors becomes much stronger. This is the key point. A 1980p Kennedy half-dollar does not need to be rare in its original mintage to become difficult in top condition. Millions were produced, but millions of coins do not remain perfectly preserved. Half-dollars were stored in bags, transported in bulk, placed into rolls, handled by collectors, and exposed to contact with other coins. A tiny mark across Kennedy's cheek, a contact mark in the open fields, weak luster, or a distracting blemish can prevent an otherwise beautiful coin from reaching the highest grades. Professional grading information shows just how important this can become. The 1980p Kennedy half-dollar is considered very common through approximately MS-65. At MS-66 it becomes more challenging, and at MS-67 it becomes scarce. PCGS has reported that after decades of grading hundreds of mint state examples, only a single specimen had reached the MS-67 plus level as of late 2024, with no MS-68 example known in that reference. That does not mean every MS-67 is worth a fortune, but it demonstrates how dramatically condition can change the rarity of an otherwise common coin. There is also a verified auction result that shows why serious collectors pay attention to this issue. A 1980 Kennedy half-dollar graded MS-64 by PCGS realized $3,840 at Heritage Auctions on August 18, 2024. That is an extraordinary result compared with the face value of the coin, and it demonstrates an important lesson. You should never assume that every 1980 Kennedy half-dollar is valuable simply because one exceptional example sold for thousands. Auction prices are determined by grade, eye appeal, certification, timing, buyer competition, and the exact characteristics of the individual coin. For ordinary examples, realistic values are much more modest. A circulated 1980 Kennedy half-dollar will generally remain around face value, with perhaps a small premium in certain collecting situations. Attractive about uncirculated pieces may bring a modest premium. Lower mint state examples can generally be purchased for only a small amount above face value. MS-65 examples may command several dollars depending on quality and market conditions. MS-66 pieces can move into higher single-digit or low double-digit territory, while exceptional MS-67 examples can bring significantly more, especially when professionally graded and visually impressive. The very top examples are where four-figure auction results become possible, but those coins are not representative of the average 1980 Kennedy half-dollar. This is where caution becomes essential. The internet is full of dramatic claims about ordinary Kennedy half-dollars supposedly being worth tens of thousands or millions of dollars because of scratches, stains, missing details, or strange colors. Most of those claims do not represent genuine mint errors. A real mint error occurs during the manufacturing process. It can involve problems with the planchet, die, striking process, collar, or other stages of production. Examples can include off-center strikes, clipped planchets, broad strikes, multiple strikes, dramatic die problems, or other recognized mint-made abnormalities. Post-mint damage is completely different. If a coin has a scratch from a sharp object, a dent from being dropped, a gouge, corrosion from chemicals, discoloration from storage, or damage caused by machinery after leaving the mint, it is not automatically a valuable mint error. The best way to investigate a suspected error is to compare the unusual feature with the way a coin is actually manufactured. Does the metal flow naturally around the feature? Does the error affect the design in a way consistent with a striking problem? Does the weight support the theory? Does the edge provide evidence? Can the same characteristic be documented on known examples? These questions are far more important than simply finding something that looks unusual. You should also be careful with double designs. Not every blurry date or double-looking letter is a valuable double die. Machine doubling, die deterioration, strike weakness, and damage can create appearances that resemble doubling. A genuine collectible variety should be identified using established numismatic evidence rather than a random online claim. If you believe your 1980 Kennedy half-dollar has a major mint error, do not clean it, and do not attempt to repair it. Photograph the obverse, reverse, edge, and unusual area, then have it examined by a reputable coin dealer or professional grading service. Authentication becomes especially important when a coin appears to be worth serious money. Check the weight, diameter, edge surfaces, and design. Look for signs of alteration. Be suspicious if someone claims an ordinary circulated 1980 Kennedy half-dollar is worth millions without providing a documented auction history or professional attribution. The verified market record for this issue shows that valuable examples do exist, but the value is concentrated in exceptional condition and genuinely unusual pieces, not ordinary pocket change. There is another fascinating collector fact about this coin. Half-dollars are not commonly encountered in everyday commerce, even though the denomination remains legal tender. Many Americans simply do not see them very often. That means a 1980 Kennedy half-dollar found today may have spent decades inside a collection, bankroll, coin jar, drawer, or inherited accumulation rather than circulating continuously. This is one reason collectors enjoy searching older half-dollars. A coin that looks ordinary at first can sometimes turn out to be an unusually preserved survivor. If you have one in your collection right now, resist the temptation to judge it under dim lighting. Hold it under a strong light and tilt it slowly. Look across Kennedy's cheek, jaw, neck, and the open fields. Examine the hair above the ear and around the forehead. Then turn it over and inspect the eagle, shield, lettering, and open areas of the reverse. You are looking for marks, scratches, discoloration, weak strikes, and signs of cleaning. A beautiful natural luster that moves across the surface as you rotate the coin is a good sign. A dull surface covered with fine parallel scratches can indicate cleaning. Preservation is simple but important. Handle the coin by its edges. Avoid touching the surfaces with your fingers because oils can leave residue. Store it in an inert holder or quality coin capsule rather than a soft plastic material that may damage the surface over time. Keep it away from moisture, extreme temperatures, and household chemicals. And most importantly, never polish it to make it look newer. You cannot turn a circulated coin into an uncirculated coin by cleaning it. So what should you do before selling a 1980p Kennedy half-dollar? First, confirm the date. Second, confirm the P mint mark. Third, check the weight and diameter if you suspect something unusual. Fourth, inspect the edge. Fifth, determine whether the coin shows circulation wear or remains mint state. Sixth, examine the surfaces under good lighting. Seventh, investigate any suspected error carefully. And finally, if the coin appears exceptionally preserved or genuinely unusual, consider professional authentication and grading before accepting an offer. The most important lesson from the 1980p Kennedy half-dollar is that rarity is not always obvious. 44 million coins were produced, so an ordinary example is not a hidden fortune. But condition can create a completely different story. A common coin in ordinary condition can remain a 50-cent piece, while an extraordinary survivor with exceptional grade and eye appeal can enter a much more competitive market. That is why serious collectors inspect coins that most people overlook. So the next time you find a 1980p Kennedy half-dollar in an old coin jar, inherited collection, drawer, or box of forgotten change, do not dismiss it. Look closely at that tiny P, check the date. Study the surfaces. Weigh the coin if something seems unusual. Examine the edge. And if you think you have found an exceptional example, do not clean it, and do not rush to sell it for the first offer you receive. Your next interesting discovery might not be a famous silver rarity. It could be an ordinary-looking copper nickel-clad half-dollar that survived 4.5 decades with remarkably clean surfaces. The 1980p Kennedy half-dollar proves that sometimes the real treasure is not hiding in plain sight because the coin is ancient or made of precious metal. Sometimes the treasure is hidden in the details. At first glance, the 1981 D Kennedy half-dollar may look like nothing more than 50 cents. But if you have one in unusually sharp condition, you may be holding a coin that collectors are willing to pay significantly more for. And the most surprising part is that you do not need a mysterious million-dollar story to make this coin interesting. The real opportunity is hiding in condition, quality, and the difference between an ordinary circulated example and an exceptionally preserved coin. So before you spend a 1981 D Kennedy half-dollar, take a closer look, because the details on this coin can make a dramatic difference. The 1981 D Kennedy half-dollar was struck at the Denver Mint during an important period in American history. The United States was entering the 1980s after years of economic uncertainty, high inflation, changing interest rates, and major political and social shifts. Ronald Reagan had taken office in January of 1981, beginning a new administration that promised major changes in economic policy. At the same time, Americans were still dealing with the effects of the energy crises and inflation that had shaped much of the previous decade. Into this changing America came the 1981 D Kennedy half-dollar, a 50-cent denomination that had already developed a fascinating history of its own. The Kennedy half-dollar was first introduced in 1964, shortly after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. The design was created very quickly so that the new coin could enter production as a national tribute. Gilroy Roberts designed the obverse portrait of Kennedy, while Frank Gasparo created the reverse. By 1981, the design had been in production for nearly 2 decades, making the 1981 D issue part of an established American coinage tradition. There is another important detail that separates the 1981 D Kennedy half-dollar from some of the earlier Kennedy half-dollars. This coin was not made from silver. Beginning in 1971, regular Kennedy half-dollars were produced using a copper-nickel-clad composition. The outer layers contain 75% copper and 25% nickel, surrounding a pure copper center. The total weight is approximately 11.30 grams, the diameter is about 30.61 millimeters, and the edge contains 150 reeds. That means this is a large coin compared with modern cents, nickels, dimes, and quarters, but its metal content is very different from the silver Kennedy half-dollars of the 1960s. The 1981 D Kennedy half-dollar was struck at the Denver Mint, and the D Mint mark is the feature you absolutely need to check. Turn the coin to the obverse, the side showing President Kennedy. Look near the lower part of the portrait, around the area beneath Kennedy's neck. You should find a small D indicating Denver. If the date is 1981 and the mint mark is D, you have the exact coin we are discussing. The official reported mintage for the 1981 D Kennedy half-dollar was 27,839,533 pieces. That is a substantial production number, so this is not a coin that should automatically be considered rare simply because it is from 1981 or because it carries the Denver Mint mark. This is one of the most important lessons in coin collecting. A coin can be old, interesting, and collectible without being extremely rare. What makes the 1981 D particularly interesting is the condition in which surviving examples can be found. Think about what happened to these coins after they left the Denver Mint. Some were placed into collections almost immediately. Others were stored in mint sets or kept in rolls. Many were handled, transported, stacked, and eventually spent. Every time a coin moves through circulation, it has another opportunity to receive scratches, contact marks, dents, discoloration, or other damage. That is why two coins with exactly the same date and mint mark can have dramatically different values. Now take a close look at the design. On the front, Kennedy faces left, with the date 1981 positioned near the bottom. The word Liberty stretches across the upper portion of the coin, while In God We Trust appears across the lower central area. The reverse features the presidential seal-inspired design with an eagle, shield, arrows, olive branch, stars, and the inscriptions United States of America and $50. One of the easiest ways to make a mistake with a 1981 D Kennedy $50 is assuming that every unusual mark is an error. It is not. This distinction is extremely important if you are searching through old coins hoping to discover something valuable. A genuine mint error happens during the manufacturing process at the mint. Examples can include problems involving planchets, striking, dies, alignment, or other production stages. A damaged coin is different. If a coin was scratched with another object, hit by machinery after leaving the mint, exposed to chemicals, bent, drilled, polished, or otherwise altered after production, those marks do not automatically make it a valuable mint error. For example, imagine your 1981 D Kennedy $50 has a deep scratch across Kennedy's cheek. That may look dramatic, but a scratch alone is not evidence of a mint error. The same applies to random dents around the edge, discoloration from storage, or strange-looking marks caused by contact with other coins. Serious collectors look for evidence that the unusual feature originated during the minting process. This is where authentication becomes extremely important. If you believe your 1981 D Kennedy $50 has a major error, do not immediately clean it, polish it, scrape it, or try to improve its appearance. Take clear photographs under good lighting and compare the feature with documented mint errors. For a potentially valuable coin, professional authentication and grading can be worthwhile because an expert can determine whether the feature is genuine, damage, or simply normal variation. A heavily circulated example may show significant wear on Kennedy's hair, cheek, jaw, and the high points of the reverse design. In good condition, the coin remains identifiable but has substantial wear. Fine condition means more design detail survives, although circulation marks and wear are obvious. Very fine examples show stronger detail and less overall wear. Extremely fine coins have even sharper features and only moderate wear. About uncirculated coins have very limited circulation wear, often concentrated on the highest points. Then we reach mint state. A mint state 1981 D Kennedy half-dollar has no evidence of circulation wear, although it can still have contact marks from production and storage. The higher the grade, the more important tiny marks become. At the gem mint state level, collectors are looking for outstanding luster, strong strike quality, clean surfaces, attractive eye appeal, and very few distracting marks. According to PCGS auction records, an MS-65 example sold for $22 in a 2014 Great Collections auction, while an MS-66 example sold for $71 in a Heritage auction sale in 2004. Another MS-66 example sold for $55 in a Great Collections auction in 2012. These sales demonstrate an important reality. Ordinary examples do not suddenly become worth thousands of dollars simply because they are uncirculated. The grade has to be genuinely high, and the market has to support that quality. The real standout is MS-67. PCGS records show that an MS-67 1981 D Kennedy half-dollar sold for $1,880 at a Heritage auction sale held in August 2014. Another MS-67 example sold for $630 in a Heritage Auctions Internet auction in May 2023. Those are verified auction results, and they show why collectors pay attention to exceptional examples of this date. The difference between a normal circulated coin and a superbly preserved specimen can be enormous. But notice something very important. Those auction records do not mean every 1981 D Kennedy half-dollar is worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. Most are not. The spectacular result belongs to a coin certified at an exceptionally high grade. That is exactly why condition matters so much. For a typical circulated 1981 D Kennedy half-dollar, the value is generally close to its face value, and many examples may trade for only a modest premium depending on condition and collector demand. Attractive uncirculated pieces can bring several dollars or more, while certified examples in MS-65 and MS-66 can bring stronger premiums. At the very top of the certified grading scale, prices can rise dramatically, as the auction records demonstrate. There is also a fascinating collector lesson hidden here. PCGS lists an estimated survival population of millions for the 1981 D issue across all grades, with substantially fewer examples estimated at higher grades. That does not make the date rare in the traditional sense. Instead, the challenge is finding an example that combines the right date, mint mark, strike, surfaces, luster, and grade. Start with the date. Make sure the coin actually reads 1981. Next, locate the D mint mark below Kennedy's neck. Then inspect the surfaces. Use a good light and slowly rotate the coin. Look for scratches, heavy contact marks, dull areas, stains, unusual discoloration, and signs of cleaning. Pay special attention to Kennedy's cheek and the open fields around the portrait. These areas can reveal contact marks that make the difference between a lower mint state grade and a much higher one. Check the reverse just as carefully. Look at the eagle, shield, lettering, stars, and open fields. A coin can look beautiful from a distance and reveal numerous small marks under magnification. The strike is also important. A sharply struck coin can show stronger details, while a weaker strike may make certain areas appear less defined. Remember that weak detail does not automatically mean the coin is worn. Strike quality and circulation wear are different things. The weight provides another useful check. A normal 1981 D Kennedy half-dollar should be around 11.30 grams. A major deviation deserves investigation, especially if it is accompanied by other unusual characteristics. But do not assume that every tiny difference on a household scale proves an error. Scales have different levels of accuracy, and normal tolerances, dirt, and environmental factors can influence readings. If you discover something that looks truly unusual, resist the temptation to clean it. This may be one of the most expensive mistakes a beginning collector can make. Cleaning can leave hairlines and unnatural surfaces that permanently reduce collector appeal. A coin with original surfaces and attractive natural luster is generally much more desirable than a coin that has been polished to look shiny. Storage matters too. Keep your 1981 Kennedy $50 in a proper inert holder or protective coin storage system. Avoid touching the surfaces with your fingers whenever possible. Oils from your skin can leave residues, and repeated handling can cause problems over time. If you are storing several coins together, make sure they cannot rub against one another. And if you think you have an especially valuable example, consider professional grading. The cost of certification should make sense compared with the potential value of the coin. A worn 1981 Kennedy $50 with no unusual characteristics probably does not need expensive certification. But an exceptional coin that appears to be in the highest grades, or one showing a possible major mint error, can be a different story. Another important point is that the famous varieties associated with Kennedy $50 do not automatically apply to this specific 1981 issue. Some major varieties in the Kennedy series, such as the 1972 No FG and the 1974 Double Die Obverse, are well documented and highly collectible, but you should not transfer those characteristics to a 1981 simply because they are famous Kennedy varieties. The 1981 regular strike should be judged on its own documented characteristics. The same caution applies to internet claims about extraordinary values. You may see photographs online claiming that an ordinary 1981 Kennedy $50 is worth tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of dollars. Be extremely skeptical. A sensational price on a video thumbnail is not the same thing as a verified auction result. The documented record for a PCGS certified 1981 Kennedy $50 is $1,880 for an MS-67 example, and that provides a much more useful benchmark than an unsupported viral claim. This is actually what makes coin collecting so exciting. You do not need every coin to be rare. You need to learn how to recognize the difference between ordinary, scarce, and exceptional. The 1981 Kennedy $50 teaches that lesson perfectly. A coin with a face value of 50 cents can remain a 50-cent coin for decades, while another example from the exact same year and mint can become a serious collectible because it survived in extraordinary condition. The date is identical. The mint mark is identical. The design is identical. The difference is what happened to that individual coin after it was struck. So before you spend your next 1981 Kennedy $50, turn it over. Look at the portrait. Find the D, check the date. Examine the surfaces. Weigh it if something seems unusual. Look for genuine mint-made characteristics rather than damage. And if the coin appears unusually sharp, bright, clean, and nearly untouched, do not dismiss it just because millions were originally produced. The 1981 Kennedy $50 is not a guaranteed fortune, and most examples will not make you rich. But that is not the point. The excitement comes from knowing that the coin in your hand has a documented history, a defined mintage, a fascinating place in American coinage, and a small group of exceptional survivors that can command serious collector attention. The next valuable discovery might not be sitting behind museum glass. It could be inside an old coin jar, a forgotten collection, a roll of $50, or a box that has been sitting untouched for years. So check your coins carefully, because condition can tell a completely different story than the date alone. That is what makes the 1982 Kennedy $50 so interesting. Most examples will not make you rich, and that is important to understand, but a superbly preserved example, or one carrying a recognized variety such as the No FG variety, can be dramatically more desirable than an ordinary circulated coin. So before you spend, clean, or sell a 1982 Kennedy $50, take a closer look, because the difference between an ordinary 50-cent piece and a serious collectible can come down to condition, die variety, and a few details that are easy to miss. The story of the 1982 Kennedy $50 begins during an important period in American history. The United States was experiencing a difficult economic period in 1982, with a severe recession, high unemployment, and major changes taking place under President Ronald Reagan. Inflation was still a major concern, interest rates were extremely high, and Americans were dealing with an economy very different from the one that had existed only a few years earlier. At the same time, the Kennedy half-dollar was already changing from the way it had been treated during its earliest years. The denomination had been introduced in 1964, shortly after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, and the coin quickly became one of the most recognizable American coins of the 20th century. By 1982, the Kennedy half-dollar had already gone through several major composition changes. The original 1964 Kennedy half-dollar was 90% silver, while later issues contained reduced silver content before the United States Mint moved to the copper-nickel clad composition used on the 1982 P. Kennedy half-dollar. This means that the 1982 P. Kennedy half-dollar is not a silver half-dollar. It is a clad coin made with copper-nickel outer layers bonded to a pure copper center. The outer layers contain 75% copper and 25% nickel, while the center is copper. Its standard weight is approximately 11.3 grams, commonly listed around 11.34 grams, and its diameter is about 30.61 millimeters. The edge contains 150 reeds, giving the coin its familiar ridged appearance. Now comes one of the first things you should check. Look at the date. You want to see 1982. Then look at the reverse side of the coin, near the lower left portion of the design. The small p identifies the Philadelphia Mint. That P is extremely important because it separates the 1982 P. Kennedy half-dollar from the 1982 D. Kennedy half-dollar produced at Denver, and the 1982 S-proof Kennedy half-dollar produced at San Francisco. The 1982 P. Kennedy half-dollar was struck at Philadelphia for circulation, and the reported mintage was only 10,819,000 pieces. That is a much smaller production figure than many earlier Kennedy half-dollar issues, and it is one reason collectors pay attention to this date. But there is another fascinating part of the story. The United States Mint did not issue a regular annual uncirculated mint set for 1982 or 1983. That matters because mint sets have historically provided collectors with large numbers of clean, carefully preserved examples of circulation coins. Without that normal source, high-quality 1982 P. Kennedy half-dollars can be more interesting to collectors, especially when the coin reaches the very high mint state grades. Still, do not make the mistake of thinking that every 1982 P. Kennedy half-dollar is rare. The coin is relatively common in circulated grades and in many lower mint state grades. The real challenge comes when you start looking for exceptionally clean examples. That is where the story changes. The obverse features John F. Kennedy facing left, based on the work of Gilroy Roberts. Around Kennedy are the familiar inscriptions Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and the date 1982. On the reverse, designed by Frank Gasparo, you will see the presidential seal with the eagle, shield, arrows, olive branch, stars, and the inscriptions United States of America, E Pluribus Unum, and half-dollar. The overall design is familiar to millions of Americans, but tiny differences created during the minting process can turn an ordinary-looking coin into a variety that collectors specifically search for. One of the most important varieties associated with the 1982 P. Kennedy half-dollar is the No FG variety. The FG refers to the initials of Frank Gasparo, the reverse designer. On normal examples, the FG initials appear on the reverse near the bottom right area of the design, close to the eagle and the rim. On recognized No FG examples, those initials are missing or dramatically absent because of die characteristics. This is not something you should assume simply because the initials are difficult to see. A weak strike, circulation wear, dirt, toning, or damage can make the initials harder to recognize. That distinction is extremely important because collectors have a simple rule when evaluating supposed errors. If something happened because the coin was struck incorrectly at the United States Mint, it may qualify as a genuine mint error or recognized variety. If something happened after the coin left the mint, it is usually damage and normally does not create major collector value. For example, imagine someone scratches the surface, bends the edge, drills a hole, removes metal, applies chemicals, or deliberately alters the design. Those things may make the coin look unusual, but they are post-mint alterations. They do not automatically make the coin rare. On the other hand, a genuine mint error can involve problems such as an off-center strike, clipped planchet, broad strike, doubled design, wrong planchet, or other documented production mistake. Even then, the error must be genuine and significant enough to interest collectors. The no-FG variety is different from a dramatic accidental error because it is a recognized die variety. The key is that the missing initials result from the characteristics of the die used to strike the coin rather than somebody damaging the coin afterward. That is why authentication matters. A heavily circulated example may be worth little more than its 50-cent face value, although collectors may pay somewhat more for attractive examples or coins needed for a particular collection. In good condition, the major design elements remain visible but considerable where is present. In fine condition, more detail remains on Kennedy and the reverse, but the coin clearly shows circulation. Very fine examples have substantially stronger detail, while extremely fine examples show only moderate wear and retain much of the original design sharpness. About uncirculated examples may have only slight friction on the highest points, with much of the original surface remaining. But once you enter mint state territory, you are no longer talking about circulation wear. A mint state coin has not experienced normal circulation wear, although it can still have contact marks, scratches from bags or storage, weak strikes, or other imperfections. MS-60 is the beginning of the mint state scale, and the difference between an ordinary mint state example and a beautiful gem mint state coin can be enormous. For a typical 1982 P. Kennedy $50, circulated examples generally remain inexpensive, often around face value to a few dollars depending on appearance and market demand. Attractive uncirculated examples may bring several dollars to perhaps the low tens of dollars. Certified MS-64 and MS-65 pieces can commonly move into the tens of dollars, while MS-66 examples may sell for several tens of dollars and sometimes more depending on the holder, eye appeal, strike, and current demand. The really interesting territory begins around MS-67. High-grade population becomes much smaller, and collectors compete for coins with exceptional surfaces, strong luster, attractive appearance, and minimal marks. A normal 1982 P. Kennedy $50 in a very high grade can therefore be worth hundreds of dollars, while exceptional certified pieces can move considerably higher. And there is a verified auction record that shows just how dramatic that difference can become. PCGS records an auction record of $2,820 for a 1982 P. Kennedy $50 graded MS-67, sold by Heritage Auctions in April 2016. Another PCGS recorded sale shows an MS-66 example selling for $36 at Great Collections in 2014. These sales demonstrate something important. The value is not simply determined by the date. It is determined by the combination of date, mint, grade, variety, eye appeal, and collector demand. The no-FG variety creates another level of interest. A recognized 1982 P no-FG Kennedy $50 can carry a premium over a normal example, particularly when it is professionally authenticated and graded at a high mint state level. PCGS records a 2024 Stax Bowers auction where an NGC MS-67 1982 P no-FG example sold for $145. That does not mean every no-FG coin is worth $145. Auction prices vary, and the grade, certification, appearance, and exact attribution all matter. This is why you should never believe a headline claiming that every 1982 P. Kennedy $50 is worth thousands or millions of dollars. There is no reliable evidence that an ordinary 1982 P. Kennedy $50 has a multimillion-dollar market value. The documented high value comes from exceptional condition and specific collectible examples, not from the date alone. Start by examining the coin under good lighting. Do not immediately clean it. Look at the date and confirm 1982. Then locate the P mint mark. Examine the reverse carefully, especially the area where the FG initials should appear. If the initials seem absent, compare the coin with authenticated photographs or have it examined by a knowledgeable numismatist. Do not use a knife, chemical, polishing compound, or abrasive material to make the details more visible. Cleaning can permanently damage the surfaces and significantly reduce collector appeal. Next, check the weight with an accurate digital scale. A normal clad Kennedy $half should be around 11.3 grams, although minor differences can occur because of manufacturing tolerances and wear. If the weight is dramatically different, do not automatically assume you have discovered a valuable error. First, consider whether the coin has been damaged, altered, or exposed to something that removed metal. Genuine wrong planchet or major composition errors require professional examination. Then inspect the edge. A normal 1982 P Kennedy $half should have a regular reeded edge and the expected clad appearance. Look for anything unusual, but remember that edge damage is common on circulated coins and is usually not valuable. Pay close attention to the surfaces as well. A coin with bright, original luster and very few contact marks is much more desirable than a coin that has been heavily scratched or polished. Kennedy $half are large coins, so they can show contact marks easily. A coin may technically be uncirculated while still having enough marks to prevent it from receiving a high grade. If you believe you have a major variety or mint error, professional certification can be worth considering. Established grading services can authenticate the coin, determine its grade, and in appropriate cases attribute a recognized variety. This can make a major difference when selling a valuable coin because buyers are generally more confident when the authenticity and grade have been independently verified. Preservation is equally important. Handle the coin by its edges rather than touching the surfaces. Keep it in an inert holder designed for coins, away from moisture, heat, chemicals, and extreme environmental conditions. Never polish it to make it look newer. A natural original surface is usually far more desirable to serious collectors than an artificially brightened coin. There is also a fascinating collector lesson hidden inside the 1982 P Kennedy $half. Sometimes a coin becomes interesting not because millions of people are searching for it in pocket change, but because collectors are searching for the best possible example. The 1982 P issue is a perfect illustration of that idea. Its mintage of 10,819,000 is not microscopic, but the supply of truly exceptional coins is much smaller. As grade increases, the number of surviving coins capable of reaching the highest levels falls sharply. That means the coin sitting in your collection may not be valuable because it is old. It may be valuable because it is unusually well preserved, because it has a recognized variety, or because it has a genuine mint error that can be authenticated. So before you spend a 1982 P Kennedy $half for 50 cents, pause for a moment. Check the date. Check the P, check the reverse. Look for the FG initials. Examine the surfaces. Check the edge. Consider the weight. Look for evidence of a genuine mint-made variety, or error rather than damage caused after the coin left the mint. And remember the most important lesson of all. A coin does not become valuable simply because someone online claims it is rare. Real value comes from documented rarity, recognized varieties, genuine errors, exceptional condition, strong collector demand, and actual market evidence. The 1982 P Kennedy $half may have been created during a difficult moment in American economic history, but decades later it continues to tell a fascinating story. Most examples are modestly valued, yet the finest pieces and recognized varieties can command serious premiums. That contrast is exactly what makes coin collecting so exciting. The 1983 P Kennedy $half is exactly the kind of coin that can fool people. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary modern $half from the early 1980s. It is made from copper and nickel, it was produced in large numbers, and most examples are not rare. But there is one unusual variety connected with the 1983 P issue that has attracted serious attention from collectors, and in exceptional condition, examples with the right characteristics can bring surprisingly strong prices. So before you spend a 1983 P Kennedy $half, There are several things you need to check, because the difference between an ordinary example and a desirable collector coin may come down to details that are easy to miss. The 1983 P. Kennedy half-dollar was struck at the Philadelphia Mint during a fascinating period in American history. The United States was moving through the early years of the 1980s, a time of high interest rates, changing technology, economic uncertainty, and major political and cultural changes. Ronald Reagan was president, personal computers were beginning to enter American homes and businesses, and the country was moving deeper into a new technological era. Yet the Kennedy half-dollar itself had a history that went back much further. The denomination had been introduced in 1964 as a tribute to President John F. Kennedy following his assassination in 1963. The design was created remarkably quickly. Gilroy Roberts designed the portrait of Kennedy on the obverse, while Frank Gasparo created the reverse featuring the presidential seal-inspired eagle, arrows, olive branch, and surrounding stars. By 1983, the Kennedy half-dollar had already become one of the most recognizable American coins of the modern era. The 1983 P. Kennedy half-dollar was a regular business strike produced at Philadelphia, and its official mintage was 34,139,000 pieces. That number immediately tells us something important. This is not a coin where every surviving example is automatically rare. More than 34 million were struck, so ordinary circulated examples are generally common. But coin collecting is not simply about how many coins were originally produced. It is also about how many survive in exceptional condition, whether unusual varieties exist, whether a coin contains a genuine mint error, and how strongly collectors compete for the best examples. The specifications make this coin easy to identify. The 1983 P. Kennedy half-dollar has a diameter of 30.6 mm and a standard weight of 11.34 grams. It has a reeded edge and a copper-nickel-clad composition. The outer layers contain copper and nickel, while the core is copper. Unlike earlier Kennedy half-dollars made with silver, the 1983 P issue contains no silver composition that would make an ordinary example valuable simply because of precious metal content. That is an important point because many people hear the words Kennedy half-dollar and immediately assume silver. The 1983 P is not one of those silver Kennedy halves. Now take a close look at the obverse. You should see the portrait of John F. Kennedy facing left. The word Liberty stretches across the upper portion, while I in God We Trust appears on both sides of Kennedy's portrait. The date 1983 is positioned at the bottom. Just beneath Kennedy's neck, you should find the P mint mark identifying Philadelphia. That tiny P is one of the first things you should check when searching for this exact coin. Turn the coin over and the real detective work begins. The reverse shows the presidential seal-style eagle with arrows in its talons and an olive branch nearby. United States of America and half-dollar surround the design. But collectors should also examine the area near the bottom of the reverse design where the initials FG normally appear. Those initials stand for Frank Gasparo, the reverse designer. This is where the 1983 P. Kennedy half-dollar becomes much more interesting. Some 1983 P pieces have been identified with the FG initials missing or extremely weak. NGC recognizes a 1983 P no FG variety, and its current guide lists substantially higher values for pristine examples than for ordinary 1983 P pieces. But there is a major warning here. Not every 1983 P half-dollar with weak-looking initials is a valuable no FG variety. The FG initials can become weak because of die polishing, wear, striking conditions, circulation, dirt, or other factors. A coin that has been heavily circulated may simply have lost detail. A coin can also be deliberately altered after leaving the mint. Someone can polish, grind, scrape, or otherwise manipulate the reverse in an attempt to make the FG initials disappear. That is not a genuine mint error. It is damage or alteration. A legitimate collectible variety needs to be examined carefully. Collectors generally look for a complete absence of the designer initials in the appropriate area, not merely a faint or partially visible FG. Under magnification and proper lighting, remnants may become visible on coins that initially appear to have no initials at all. This is why authentication matters. If you think you have found an important 1983 Pinot FG, do not immediately assume you have discovered a fortune. And this is another reason the 1983p is such a good coin for learning how modern varieties work. The most valuable discovery is not always the oldest coin. Sometimes the most interesting clue is hidden in a tiny design detail. Look at the entire coin under strong light. Check Kennedy's hair, cheek, jawline, and the high points of the portrait. On the reverse, examine the eagle's feathers, the lettering, the stars, the arrows, and the olive branch. Look for unusual doubling, missing design elements, off-center striking, broad striking, multiple strikes, clips, or other characteristics that could indicate a genuine mint error. One of the biggest mistakes beginning collectors make is confusing damage with a mint error. A scratch caused by another coin is not an error. A gouge made by a machine is not an error. A flattened area caused by someone hitting the coin is not an error. Chemical discoloration is not automatically an error. Even a strange-looking edge does not automatically mean the mint made a mistake. A genuine mint error generally occurs during the manufacturing process. That means the abnormal feature was created while the coin was being struck or processed at the mint. Examples can include an off-center strike, broad strike, multiple strike, clipped planchet, or other recognized production errors. The strongest evidence is usually consistency with known minting processes and a feature that could not reasonably have been created after the coin left the mint. And we have verified evidence that unusual 1983p errors can bring serious collector interest. Auction records include a 1983p Kennedy half-dollar struck broad struck and graded MS64 that sold for $168 at a Stack's Bowers auction in June 2024. Another 1983p example, struck uncentered broad struck and graded MS65, sold for $145 in the same auction. An even more dramatic example was a multi-struck broad struck 1983p graded MS63 that sold for $552. There was also a 1983p struck approximately 10% off-center and graded MS65 that sold for $192. These are not prices for ordinary 1983p Kennedy halves. They demonstrate what can happen when a genuine mint-made error combines with strong condition and collector demand. That distinction is crucial. You should never hear a story about a rare error selling for hundreds of dollars and assume every 1983p half dollar is worth hundreds. The error itself is what creates the premium. A circulated 1983p Kennedy half dollar with normal wear is usually worth little more than its face value. In good condition, the coin shows substantial wear and many of the finer design details are gone. Fine condition means more detail remains, but noticeable circulation is still present. Very fine examples show considerably more definition, while extremely fine pieces have only moderate wear on the highest points. About uncirculated examples show only slight evidence of circulation and may retain much of their original surface quality. Once you reach mint state, the game changes. Mint state coins have not been circulated, so there should be no actual wear from use. Instead, graders evaluate marks, luster, strike quality, surface preservation, and overall eye appeal. An MS60 coin can still have numerous contact marks. As the grade rises through MS63, MS64, MS65, and beyond, the demands become much stricter. For ordinary 1983p examples, current guides show that circulated pieces are generally around face value to modest premiums, while high-grade examples can move into the tens or hundreds of dollars depending on the grading service, grade, and market. PCGS currently lists guide values that rise sharply at the upper mint state levels, reaching hundreds of dollars for very high-grade examples and thousands in the most exceptional conditional territory. But guide values are not guarantees. Actual selling prices can be much lower or higher depending on the exact coin, certification, timing, and buyer demand. NGC's current information is particularly interesting for the 1983 Pinot FG variety. Its guide indicates ordinary circulated 1983p examples around the face value range, while the recognized no FG variety can command substantially more in pristine condition, with the guide reaching as high as $550 at the very top levels listed. There are also documented market sales of certified 1983p no FG pieces, including an NGC MS-64 example that sold for $135 in 2023. That gives us something much more useful than an internet rumor. We have a documented transaction showing that collectors have actually paid a premium for a certified example. But remember something very important. A high asking price on an internet listing is not the same as a verified sale. A seller can ask almost anything for a coin. What matters more is what qualified buyers have actually paid, especially through established auction records or documented transactions. This is one of the most important rules in coin collecting. Cleaning a coin can permanently damage the original surface and destroy collector appeal. Even if your coin looks dark, dirty, dull, or unattractive, resist the temptation to polish it. Do not use metal polish, abrasive cloths, household chemicals, toothpaste, or aggressive cleaning solutions. A coin that looks ordinary but retains original surfaces can be worth more than a bright coin that has been cleaned. Second, weigh it carefully with an accurate digital scale. The expected standard weight is 11.34 grams. A small difference can occur because of normal tolerance and wear, so one unusual reading does not automatically prove an error. But a significant discrepancy is a reason for further investigation. Third, measure the diameter. It should be approximately 30.6 millimeters. Examine the reeded edge carefully. An abnormal edge, unusual thickness, or major dimensional difference may be worth investigating. Fourth, check the P mint mark beneath Kennedy's neck. Make sure you are actually looking at a 1983p and not a different date or mint. Then turn the coin over and inspect the FG initials with magnification. Use several lighting angles. Do not rely on one photograph or one quick glance. If you believe you have a true no FG example, especially if the coin is uncirculated, consider professional authentication and grading. Certification can make an enormous difference because buyers are more comfortable paying substantial premiums when a recognized grading service has examined the coin and identified the variety. And here is something many people overlook. A spectacular error can be more valuable than the normal coin even when the date itself is common. The verified 1983p broad strikes and multi-strike example demonstrate exactly that. The date is not rare by itself. The mint error is what creates the excitement. There is also a fascinating historical reason collectors continue searching Kennedy half dollars. These coins represent a direct connection to one of the most important moments in 20th century American history. Even though the 1983p was produced nearly 2 decades after Kennedy's death, the design continued the tradition established in 1964. The denomination had become less common in everyday commerce by the early 1980s, which means many people rarely encountered Kennedy halves in ordinary transactions. That helped create a strange situation where millions were produced, but the coins were not necessarily seen every day. Today, that makes an old 1983p half dollar an interesting time capsule. It carries the image of a president whose legacy remains deeply embedded in American history, while the coin itself reflects the technology and economic environment of the early 1980s. A normal circulated example is generally not a jackpot coin. A normal mint state example may bring a modest premium depending on grade and demand. A very high-grade certified example can be considerably more desirable. A genuine major mint error can bring hundreds of dollars, as documented auction records demonstrate. And a properly authenticated 1983p no FG variety can also command a substantial premium, especially in high grade. But there is no credible reason to claim that an ordinary 1983p Kennedy half dollar is automatically worth thousands or millions of dollars. The real treasure is in identifying exactly what makes your coin different. That is the lesson every serious collector should remember. Do not focus only on the date. Study the mint mark. Study the design. Study the surfaces. Study the weight. Study the edge. Look for recognized varieties and genuine mint errors. Compare your coin with reliable references. And if the coin appears exceptional, get it professionally examined before making a decision. You might open an old jar and find nothing more than 50 cents. Or you might find a beautifully preserved example that deserves a place in a serious collection. You might even discover a genuine mint-made error that transforms an ordinary-looking 1983 Kennedy half-dollar into something far more interesting. The next time you see a 1983 Kennedy half-dollar, don't automatically spend it. Turn it over. Look closely at those tiny FG initials. Check the weight. Study the strike. Inspect the edge. And most importantly, remember that the difference between an ordinary coin and a valuable collectible can sometimes be hidden in a detail smaller than the tip of a pencil. That old half-dollar in your pocket, your family's coin jar, or your collection may not be a fortune, but it could be a fascinating piece of American history, and with the right variety, condition, or genuine mint error, it could be worth much more than 50 cents.